Welcome back to the Lions Den podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nolan Ritchie. Here today with me is, same as always, Aiden Doig. Aiden, how's it going, buddy?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. And today on the show, we have Dan Craig. He's a Division I lacrosse player and now playing box lacrosse for the Toronto Rock of the NLL. So we're going to put it to that interview now.
Yeah,
Dan, how
Everybody,
are you?
I'm well, guys. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Aiden, how are you in Honeywood?
oh good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Dan, we've got quite a few questions for you today, but the most pressing of them all, what's it like sharing a name with James Bond?
Oh man, I get this like almost 5 times every day. I'm in sales, so anytime somebody sees my email signature, it's just like, are you the James Bond or are you the wannabe James Bond? And I always say wannabe. So I get it all the time. Wish I had his money, wish I had his accent, wish I had a lot of things he had for sure.
That leads us right into our next question. What are you doing? You said you're in sales, but what are you doing for work right now?
Yeah, so I'm a technical recruiter. I don't know if you guys know much about that, but there's a lot of companies that are in need of IT talent in the world we live in. And even if an interview like this, it's all virtual, right? So there's a lot of companies that are needing technical support across the greater Toronto area and or just all across Canada and the United States. So I work for a company called Core GTA. I'm the director of recruitment here, and we basically help specific companies in their needs of acquiring technical professionals.
So are you in an office or are you working from home then?
I'm in an office right now because Toronto moved to the gray zone, but I have been working from home for, I don't know, since March 13th, almost a calendar year, which is crazy.
How was that? Did you like working from home better or did you like office?
They both have their pros and cons, right? In the early stages, I'm sure you guys had this with school. It's like a hurdle to figure things out, and not just yourself, but the teachers and staff and technology. So working from home in the early stages is definitely difficult, but you get in your groove. It's kind of the new norm. But now that I've had a couple days of in office, there's nothing like being in person with these types of things. So certainly prefer in person, but kind of have to figure it out whenever you're working home for a year, right? So pros and cons.
Yeah, for sure. So for anybody watching this who doesn't know you, you went to Penn State. You obviously went to CD. What was it like transitioning from a smaller school like CD to a D1 school like Penn State?
Yeah, Penn State, there was over 100,000 people that would show up for a football game, right? On a given weekend. So it was a lot to get used to. It was definitely a different environment coming from Shelburne, which is like under 10,000 people. I hadn't necessarily traveled much as well. So it took getting used to, but I loved it. It was a great experience. Don't have family in the United States, so I left a lot of what I felt was comfortable in my life at that time here and made a little bit of a new life, new friends, a lot of new experiences in the United States. So overall, it was good. It had its challenges for sure, but positive experience and certainly glad I did it. Learned a lot about myself.
I was gonna say probably the biggest thing you hear about going to the States for school is about the D1 college sports. Does it live up to its name? Definitely football for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it does and it doesn't, right? So whenever you think about going to a Division I school and having the kind of the name behind that, I guess, it's cool. It's cool to think of, and maybe looking back now, it's just like, yeah, that was kind of cool. But whenever you're in it, you don't really think of that because there's so much that you have to do as a student athlete that a person wouldn't think of, like mandatory study hall, right? It's things you don't think of whenever you're looking at going to like D1. And then there's things like film. Film is a solid like hour and a half, 2 hours. and you think that you have trained or done weight training before, you've never done it like you will do at Division 1. So whenever you tack all that up, it's certainly a different experience than you think. But at the end of the day, if you have the ability to do it, I would definitely promote it every day of the week.
Now, is Penn State the only school that you talk to? Or were you
I
kind of
was
in conversations?
I was in conversations with another school. It's a smaller school. You probably haven't heard of it, but it's in Rochester. It's called RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was Division 3. But I was a weird case. Like, I played lacrosse. I was like relatively decent at box lacrosse, but I never played field. So I wasn't really on the map at all whenever it came to the United States and field lacrosse. So I was actually one of my buddies that I played with here, box lacrosse, that said, you know, you should kind of look into this. And he was at Penn State, and it started all that conversation. But I really only looked at 2 schools, RIT, Penn State.
So then you say you never played field before that. Is that a weird transition? Like, that's got to be, right? Going from playing indoor your whole life only in the summers to playing field lacrosse.
Yeah, like it's the same premise. It's the same end goal, right? Score more goals than the other team, you win. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like how hockey is to field hockey. It's very similar. If you have the skill set in one, you likely have the skill set in the other, but it does take getting used to different rules, all that stuff. So there was a learning curve for sure. And it took me a while to get used to it. Honestly, by my 4th year, I was just feeling comfortable, which is insane. But learning curve.
What did you study whenever you went to Penn State?
I went in undeclared, which means that I didn't have a major right from the get-go. That had a lot to do with the fact that I was such a late recruit. I was recruited in my last year of high school, which actually took 5 years. So it was a very, very quick onboarding, I would say, process with them. So I went in undeclared. And then eventually by the end, I got a Bachelor of Science in Economics.
Did you so then after you get your degree, and then you come back to Canada, is there like equivalency exam that you have to write or something, or it's just like you got your degree and you're good?
Yep, got my degree and I was good. Onto the job market, trying to see what was out there, all that fun stuff.
Was it an even bigger learning curve than coming back to Canada and playing box again after staying out of it for 4 years?
It's like riding a bike. I actually didn't play box lacrosse for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, because I had a couple injuries.
Yeah.
So back injury, ankle injury, things like that. So I didn't play over the summer, and I hadn't played for a while. But whenever I got drafted, and then I had the ability to start playing again, it was actually pretty wild. I think my first time playing a game in that 3-year span was my first game in the NLL, which is pretty wild.
I remember being at that game, but before we switch to the NLL topic, so shortly before you went to Penn State, the Jerry Sandusky and Joe Paterno scandal reached its peak. Did this turn you away from the school, or did you take any of the effects into your decision of going to Penn State?
Of course, I knew about them. And that's absolutely something to be cognizant of whenever you're making a decision like that. What I ultimately did, which is what I would advise anybody to do, is make your pros and cons list, right? There were more pros that led me to Penn State. And like I said to you guys before, I had a friend that was there. He had spent 1 full year there. So I really leaned on him. Said like, hey, what's this all about? This is a very scary, big subject. And is there things that I need to know, right? Put a lot of trust in this guy. He was a guy that I played with. I'd known for a while. And in making the decision to go there, it was one that I was very confident with. with not only myself and my family and friends. That's super important to me too. So it was definitely something that was in the back of my mind. But after speaking with people that, I very much respect, very comfortable with the decision.
Yeah.
Now,
So
you go
what's
ahead,
that?
Aiden. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Interestingly enough, before you guys jump off, the locker room for the lacrosse team is actually the old football locker room, and where we did film for just like practice games, whatever, is the same film room that they would have used at that time.
So some listeners listening to this might not know that whole story. So do you just want to give a quick rundown of what that whole thing happened?
Sure. Yeah. So again, tricky subject, of course. I don't know everything, but through a lot of things that I know, Penn State was a very well established football team. There was a couple of gentlemen that have been there for a very long time, staff, head coach, assistant coach, names that were synonymous with not just Penn State, but football. So Jerry Sandusky is the one that, kind of made headlines for sure. And there was, conversations around sex scandals, things that were happening on the team, things that, of course, are not cool anywhere at any time, right? So there were allegations that things were happening on the team, on the Penn State facilities, as well as within University Park and State College, which is where Penn State is, amongst the community, right? Some of which being children. So very, very tricky subject, for sure. And people got looped into that over the years. Paterno, again, was the head coach, all-time winningest coach ever. And there were allegations out that he knew and he was aware of some of these things and looked the other way. And there's conversation back and forth as to if that's the case. But at the end of the day, Jerry Sandusky is behind bars right now for those things. So
Now, just before we move away from the Penn State topic, you said you were a very late recruit, being in your last year of high school. You want to just kind of run us down what a recruitment process is like for a big school, for maybe anyone that's looking as that as a hopeful option?
Mine was really, really weird. So I can tell you my story, but I can tell you the more traditional one. So my story was I had a connection on the team, right? Yeah. That person on the team was very successful, had literally a breakout year and set the all-time freshman goals for freshmen, so the first year. And the coach went to him, his name's TJ Sanders, and he said, who would you recommend, right? Who would you say could be a part of this team? So that was pretty much how it went. Jeff Tambroni was the coach, still is the coach, came down, watched me play one game of box lacrosse, and I think it was the next morning, came over to my house, met myself in person as well as my family, had great discussion, all that good stuff. Talk about if there's a potential of a scholarship, what do we need, what makes sense, kind of cover the financial aspect. And then it's super, super important to make sure where you're going to spend the next 4 years, if not more, that you're comfortable there. So you got to visit campus. So I did that. But something that a more traditional recruitment process would look like would be a camp or a big tournament that might be in Canada or it might be in the United States. It's called a prospect camp. And you go to those and you try and showcase your skills, right? And then you start in conversations with whether it's 1, 2, 10 coaches, depending on your skill level. And then you start weighing out your options and you do everything that I just said. You meet with coaches, not just yourself, but your family, you tour, you visit, you understand the academics as well, because there's big schools, but potentially there might be a smaller school that might be better for you educationally.
So, playing lacrosse from what age did you start playing?
I don't even know. That's a great question. I was a junior. I was young.
Yeah. So,
I would
playing,
think like Tyke.
yeah. So playing in a small town like Shelburne, growing up playing lacrosse, did you ever think of the NLL as an option, or that would become a reality?
The NLL was always a dream. The NLL was a dream until the day I got drafted. And then I got drafted, and it was still kind of a figment of my imagination until I went out on the floor my first time. It was something I never thought was possible. But yeah, I guess now that I'm there, it's a very cool experience.
Did you ever feel like, maybe you were set back a bit? Because I know whenever I put your name into Google, you were the 57th pick of a 59 pick draft. Maybe coming in a little underrated. Now you're one of the top guys for the Rock.
That's another kind of long story, but the synopsis of that is whenever I graduated university, I had a lot of injuries. So that's why I didn't play box cross for a number of years. And I had a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth for the sport in general, honestly, which is crazy to say now that I play professionally. But I equated lacrosse with the bad times of my injuries, and it didn't jive, right? So graduating university, economics degree, really wanted to go into the positive streamline, which made me happy, which at that time wasn't lacrosse and wasn't sports. So I really pursued my professional career, and whenever teams called me, I actually said, hey, I'm not looking to play lacrosse anymore. I don't want to play anymore. Don't draft me. It's not something I'm interested in. You'd be wasting a pick. So growing up in Shelburne and Toronto Rock having pretty significant ties with Orangeville, they kind of drafted me on a hope and a dream in the last round there. And the hope and a dream was, I guess, led to this, which is, again, a wild story. But
What would you say was the biggest thing that made you end up going and playing box again?
yeah, so I graduated, right, and I really didn't like it, but where I thought I was going to be in my professional career, I just wasn't. So I thought it was going to be easy to get a job, but it wasn't. And I figured, you know what, if I'm not in my long-term professional career at this time, I may as well give this a shot. It might be something that I might regret. Who would turn down professional lacrosse? Potentially in 5 to 10 years, I'd be kicking myself. Why didn't you do that? Right. So I went on a hope and a dream, and again, injured. So starting my NLL career, injured. So I wasn't even on like an inactive roster. I was on a physically unable to perform. It's a PUP. It's called a PUP list. So I was on this PUP list, again on a hope and a dream. Like, what is going to happen? And then they traded Stefan LeBlanc from Toronto, who's a longtime career guy in Toronto Rock, to New England. And then they said, hey, Dan, you got to play this weekend. And I'm like, guys, I haven't even practiced. I don't even have a stick. Like, what are you talking about? I don't even have shoes. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I haven't played in 3 years. They said, yeah, well, you got to do it. I'm like, all right.
And that's how it started.
That was my first game. I had, I think I had like 3 or 4 days notice. I went to Orangeville and picked up my stick at Sanderson Source for Sports, strung it. First time I threw with that lacrosse stick was in warm up for my first game. I was taking off tags for my shorts and socks and stuff. It was wild.
So
what's it like going from the Shelburne Arena playing box to stage like Scotiabank?
This is going to be super cliche, and you guys might not like this, but honestly, it's no different to me. Like the first time, whenever you step on the floor and you're not playing because you have walkthroughs and things like that in the morning, that's really cool. It's really cool because you're able to not play. You're not focused on the actual game and what you need to get done for like the next 2 hours or whatever the game is. And you look up and you look around. Like that was a cool moment. That was an aha moment. You see the Toronto Rock logo in the center of the floor. That's cool. But once the whistle goes, it's a floor. It's the same game you've been playing for years. Best players that you can play against. You're really locked in. But a cool thing, actually, probably the biggest difference is like the announcements. you score a goal, horn goes off, right? You don't get that in small
Yeah.
arenas.
I actually remember we were at one of your games and you lit it up, and this older couple was behind us, and I guess they go to a lot of games and they just kept hearing your name over that big PA system. They were just like, "Who's that Dan Craig guy?" Like they had
Yeah,
no idea who you were,
I
but
know. I
just
hear it
right
all the
now.
time. I hear it all the time. It's hilarious, but I could care less, honestly.
Yeah. So you were saying how the best part was walking out to the stadium empty, looking around. Would you say that's when reality kind of kicked in?
Um, yeah, I would say probably yeah. The biggest moment for me was whenever the whistle went and like you're going on the floor with all your gear and you catch a ball and like 10 guys are looking at or 9 guys are looking at you, right? Like that's the game on moment. So I would say that was the biggest moment where it was like, okay, we're doing this. But I definitely remember walking on the floor and being like, wow, I cannot believe I'm on this floor and I'm going to be playing tonight.
Do you ever actually, your guys' seasons overlap with either the Raptors or the
Yeah.
Leafs? Yeah. Do you ever see
Yeah.
anyone roaming around the arena?
No, we don't. I actually get that all the time too. But if you think about it, if we're playing there, they're not there.
Yeah, they're probably on a road trip, I guess.
Yeah, or they have a day off or whatever, and they don't want to be at the arena when they have a day off. So very rarely do I honestly don't even think I've like come across any of those guys, but we do get some connections to go to their games, which is really cool.
Now, what's it like balancing full-time, part-time job with,
Full time. Oh yeah.
yeah, full-time job playing professional lacrosse? You're traveling, you're practicing.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah, it's challenging. You certainly have to be regimented, which is one of the key things that I got from university is being able to balance your time and efforts and getting used to not sleeping, falling in love with coffee, loving the gym, things like that. So um, you have to be super passionate about what you do, or else you're just going to fall out of it. Right. So I'm super passionate about what I do on 2 fronts, specifically to what you just said. One is my work, professional life, and then one is my lacrosse, also now my professional life. Right. So if you don't have that, it's impossible to do it, but you have to be super, super organized. Very
Well,
difficult to manage both, honestly.
I'd say you're super passionate about it, that you're doing it for at least another 3 years.
Well, we'll see with this whole COVID nonsense, but I hope at minimum.
Yeah. So we asked you the going from Shelburne lacrosse to obviously Toronto, but the actual aspects of living, what was it like going from a smaller spot like Shelburne to downtown Toronto?
Well, I had the period where I was at Penn State, which is a massive, massive environment too. So I was used to like lots of people around, stadiums, things like that. And in my profession, sales, talk to a lot of people, right? So I'm very comfortable around people. I'm comfortable with like traveling from lacrosse and being in different cities. So I like being in the city. I live in Ronsonsville. It's a small little kind of suburb of the city. People know where High Park is. It's very, very close to there. So I'm on kind of the outskirts of Toronto. It's not as super downtown feel, but the transition I would say is super seamless if you want to do it.
Now, whenever you're playing on the road, are you working while you're on the road and making phone calls and still working, or are you kind of push one away and focus on the other?
It's well, if you ask yourself that at 7:30, I'm still in the office.
Yeah, I'd
I,
say work
I,
never ends.
yeah, no, I work a lot, but like I say, it's something I'm passionate about. It's something I signed up for too, right? So, um, I do have flexibility within my job to travel and do the things that I need to do for lacrosse, but like the phone that I'm on right now, talking to you guys, the work phone. Whenever I get a call on the work phone, I answer. So work travels with me wherever I go.
Now, was lacrosse the only sport you played growing up?
I would say it was the only pretty serious sport that I played growing up very consistently. Like I played your traditional high school sports, basketball, volleyball, a little bit of rugby here and there, but I'm an odd person in the fact I haven't played hockey. Never played hockey. Not a hockey guy. But whenever I was quite young, I played a lot of soccer, a lot of running.
So do you watch any of those sports on TV when you have your free
I
time?
I used to watch it a lot, but less and less frequent now. I don't have cable anymore.
What would you say was the biggest sport that you would watch on TV?
Huge basketball guy. I would honestly say my favorite sport, watching, is basketball. If I was 6'7", I would be playing basketball if I could. It's certainly my favorite sport. But growing up, family of hockey as well. My mom's like crazy sports person too. So whenever there was something on, it was, tennis, curling, hockey, football. Not a huge soccer family, but you name it, it was on for the
Was
most
that
part.
a was that a go-to event for you when you're in university going to the basketball games?
Uh, Less frequently basketball, honestly. Whenever there was a big game, I'd go. Football was pretty consistent, but I had a roommate who was on the hockey team, so I was very close to the hockey guys, very, very close to the hockey guys. And with the Canadian connection, you just naturally kind of go that way. So I was at probably the most hockey games of anything.
Was so both Nolan and I are pretty big hockey guys. What was that like? Did you ever attend games and see, like, was that stadium always full?
Oh yeah, so I went to like well over 50% of the home games for the hockey guys. I was really close buddies with the captain of the team, so they had tickets. They would give away tickets, and it was a really cool barn. I forget what it's called, um, but Penn State's hockey facilities and team in general for D1 was very new whenever I was there. So my first year there was actually their first year D1. So they got a bunch of money that was poured into their facilities, absolutely spectacular. And they weren't as good my first year as they were whenever I left. They were very, very strong team whenever I left. I think they were up like top 5 kind of deal.
Well, unfortunately, I just got the notification we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
at the end of every episode, we kind of do a top 3 of whatever, sports, movies. So let's hear your top 3 movies of all time.
Remember the Titans won. What would I say? Big Fat Greek Wedding, probably be up there. It's a good one. What was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about Sandlot. Sandlot is a top 3 for sure.
Barlow will just be loving the Remember the Titans answer.
Yeah, I know.
But
He
I know
loves
that
that
gets
movie.
shown in every high school from here to I don't even know how far.
Yeah.
Like,
It's an
Yeah.
unreal movie.
I was in his leadership class, and Aiden was too, and it's just his go-to. Whenever you
Yeah.
need a movie day, it's remember the Titans.
Because it's a fantastic movie. Attitude reflect leadership, Captain.
Yeah, so again, unfortunately we are reaching the end of our time. So huge thank you to you for making time. I mean, still know you're at the office, but thanks again.
My pleasure, fellas. Be happy to jump on again.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers, boys.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good night.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Huge shout out to Dan again. Best of luck to you and your lacrosse career and your career. Best of luck in Toronto. um, yeah, thanks again. We'll definitely be talking soon. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for making the time, Dan.